Is everyone ready? Bessie, give me the go. 3, 2, 1, and we're live. Welcome to the Heal with Kat show.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another week of the Heal with Kat show. If you're new here, welcome to this little pivot that we've been making in the Heal with Kat community over the last couple of months. And if you are not new here, if you have been here on the journey of the podcast and now moving into the show, I'm so grateful that you're here and that you've been on this journey with me, because it has truly been a journey. And I laugh every single time that I do these intros and I say, if you've been here with me for a while, welcome back and all of that. Because truly, it's been a journey. It's been so many ups and downs. It's been so many changes and shifts. And man, I feel like I have reinvented myself and reinvented my business a million times since starting my journey almost 5 years ago in this work. And when I first started, I was doing readings for free. And now I have a full-blown business. It's crazy to think about. And honestly, I have to thank you for being here and continuing to support the podcast and now the show and my work and social, all the social media stuff we do. Really, truly, at the end of the day, I have you to thank for being here and having the opportunity to do this. So I just want to take a moment to really just extend my heartfelt gratitude to all of you for liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting, reviewing, signing up for the email newsletter, giving me your feedback. It's just, we as business owners that are in this service-oriented space, we create for community. We create for connection. We create because we know that there are people out there that feel very similarly to us, and we want to find you. We want to find you and connect with you and share with you all of the things that we've learned on our journeys that have helped us. And that's the beauty of community. And I think something that our society could learn from today is that people have opinions every single day about a million different things. You have always the ability to decide what you vibe with and what you don't. And I want to apply those same kind of morals and values and ethics to the Heal with Kat show, because this really is a space for you to be present with one person's perspective and opinion. And, what you don't vibe with, you don't vibe with. We don't have to hate each other for it. We don't have to spew hate on the internet about it. We can just simply not agree. And I'm kind of gathering all of my thoughts here for our first question on the show today. But before we dive into the 3 questions that we have submitted for this week's show, I just want to quickly introduce myself if you are new here. My name is Kat Dow. I'm a family constellation therapy facilitator, an intuitive, and a fellow cycle breaker. I consider myself to be like your guide for this new adventure on the Heal with Kat show. Like I said, we have 100 episodes or 103 episodes behind this one of all kinds of interviews of amazing people that I've been able to talk to on all different kinds of psychological and spiritual topics. This pivot into the show is and was very divinely guided. I love talking about family patterns and relational patterns and psychology and spirituality and all of the beautiful ways that our souls are evolving on this journey. And the show is in an effort, and like I said, this is only the second one that we've put out, so this is quite new if you're catching on early. This show is in an effort to be of service more, to show up more for the collective rather than just if you want to gain some wisdom and knowledge, you have to pay for a session. This is something completely accessible and tangible for you. So on this show, you'll hear voices from my community calling or writing in with their stories and their struggles. And together we'll explore them with compassion. I love compassionate inquiry from Dr. Gabor Mate. I spent the whole summer doing most of his courses on it and getting trained in it. But curiosity, maybe sometimes a little humor, but also depth. We are just going to explore all the aspects of what it's like to address these really meaningful questions that you are submitting in. And my hope is that by listening, you'll not only gain aspects for your own healing, but you'll feel less alone in this messy and beautiful work of being human, because God knows it can be very lonely on the healing journey, especially when we're untangling so many old parts of us and inviting new ones in. So I just want to start off today's show by saying that this isn't a space about me having all the answers. It never was. I simply provide one perspective, and that perspective weighs heavily on both my interests and my personal values of the psychology and the spirituality of being human, because I believe we are deeply, innately both. So never give your power away to me. I am only a mirror for your journey. You've always had the power, and I'm here to empower you in that. So this place is just about creating room for honesty and for tenderness and for curiosity, and maybe just aha moments that land in your body that make you say, yes, this is exactly what I needed to hear today. So thank you for being here at the beginning. Grab your tea, take a deep breath. And with that, let's jump into our very first question. All right. So the first question that we're addressing on this week's episode is a very complex and layered question. It's a question that when I first received in my inbox, I wasn't really sure if I wanted to address it. The question was submitted by someone anonymous, and I really just want you to know, Anonymous, if you're listening, that I appreciate your vulnerability in asking this question, because I think many of us are thinking about this very topic, and not many of us know where to go with it, especially people in the spiritual realm. You know, when spirituality and politics really come together, it can be a very interesting perspective. So let me get into the question, and then I'll start kind of downloading some of my thoughts. Anonymous submitted, how do you make sense of everything happening in our world right now, especially politically? I know you've said you don't talk about politics, but it seems like it's the thing everyone is discussing right now. The reason I decided to even address this question is for the exact statement of it's the thing that everyone is discussing right now. And I've never taken a political stance on really a lot of things, simply because I just don't know that having a business and politics are two things that really are always a safe bet, right? Like you start having a political stance on things and, you know, you quickly understand the vulnerability in that, the risk in that from a community. But things are kind of different these days. And I think that right now, everybody is kind of being called into a path of some kind that eventually it becomes intertwined with politics, because politics today, I don't feel that it's this kind of like gray area that people can kind of coexist in, and people can have their opinions about things, and there won't really be some kind of like life-altering risk because of it. I feel like today, if you even like wear an American, like today, I'm wearing a sweater that I bought with an American flag on it. And I literally questioned wearing it because I was afraid if people were going to start making me out to be somebody that I'm not. And it's just a sweater. It's not a political statement. And the truth is that where I lie on the political spectrum is very independent and moderate. And I like to be that way. I like to look at all the different perspectives and understand what I agree with and what I don't, and what I still need to educate myself on. And for me, that's really been the medicine of this time that I'm in, witnessing all of these things happening around me and happening around all of us. It's a very chaotic time. And I've really been allowing myself in the last few weeks to educate myself and to become more curious, even about the things that I thought I had a very strong stance in. I've been allowing myself to look at both sides of the perspective, or both sides of the spectrum. I've been doing a lot of research on what the left and the right have to say about different topics or different challenges or different societal or economic issues that are going on right now. And you may feel this way, you may not feel this way, but it is tangible, the amount of hatred and violence that is going on in our world right now. This morning, I had a very sobering conversation with Tyler, where I just had this moment of like, I have to address the question around politics on today's show, because although I have many thoughts that we're going to get into about this question, the number one thing that I really wanted to come on here and say is that violence will never, ever, ever be the answer on both sides. I don't care what political party you stand in, violence and harming another human being will never be the answer. It is sickening to me how we treat each other's lives like they don't matter. It is sickening to me to turn on any news channel and see both sides just as guilty as the other of condemning one another. It is so sad to me that our world is so corrupt and our country has become so corrupt in so many ways that we haven't been able to sit down at a table and have a conversation with one another and find common ground and a way forward. This is not a stance on any side. This is something I have very much witnessed on both sides. We're moving away from humanity and we're moving into some kind of something bigger that I don't know that I can even explain to you, because so many people I've seen on TikTok, which is my main social media platform, have been saying things like, oh, I'm Republican and I'm going to unfollow all my Democrat friends, or vice versa. I've seen the same trends of hatred on both sides. And my heart hurts when I see that stuff, because that's really not the answer. And that is how far from humanity and from God I think that we have all strayed away from. That's how far we've become from this sacredness of being human. And so for me, the most comforting thing that I can do in this time is limit my news watching, limit the amount of voices from media that I'm taking in. And I've been having a lot of really eye-opening conversations with friends. I've even been, this is kind of funny, but I've been going on ChatGPT and I've been asking ChatGPT, from the Democrat perspective, what is the stance, the general stance on this? From the Republican perspective, what is the stance on this? Can you take me back to the root of the issue of this thing? Can you, I have been utilizing, and it's interesting too, like if you're on ChatGPT, I highly recommend always tell ChatGPT, do not play confirmation bias. Always give me the devil's advocate perspective. I always do that. And I always learn so much, because I think it's important that we become aware of the general sense of all sides of a perspective and not to get lost in it, because it's very easy to get lost in this stuff. You know, you just kind of keep going down the rabbit hole. I think Matthew McConaughey said something like he tried to get into some of the root causes of some of the political issues going on right now. And he's like, I literally became depressed because you just keep going. You just keep going and going and going. So try your best not to get stuck in the rabbit hole of everything, because it's easy to lose our sense of self in those spiral moments. But I do really encourage you to understand everything from many different perspectives. It's really easy to become pigeonholed or siloed or live in an echo chamber of the people around us and the news media outlets that we follow and the people we follow on social media. It's really, really easy to get lost in that. And I found myself getting lost in it. And this inner voice inside of me was like, actually, maybe we should just take a pause, take a step back and look at things from a 30,000 foot perspective. And that's been really healing for me. But aside from the educational aspect of what's going on in politics right now, I've been making an extra effort to be kind and because on TikTok, I follow many different people from different political parties and different perspectives, because I'm a lover of learning. I mean, truly, I love to learn. I love to receive information. I love to be fed by that. I'm very nourished by learning. When we take the time to understand things from a lot of different perspectives and we don't get lost in the rabbit hole of it, it gives us some time to really land where we want to land. And, I love not being in a political box. I love not being in a box in general. That has been kind of my act of rebellion since healing the good girl within me. It's kind of I don't really know where I stand because I'm still figuring it out. And if I'm still figuring it out, then don't put me in a box. I don't want to be labeled this, that, or another. I don't like that. I want to be given the freedom to have an opinion on many different things. But I think the beauty of that is that you can be in that space for as long as you want. You don't owe anybody, your family, your friends, your partner, you don't owe anybody an explanation for where you stand politically, especially if you're still educating yourself. And there shouldn't be a time limit on educating yourself for anything, unless there's an exam at the end of it, or, you have to graduate or something. But the beauty of learning is that it is a lifelong journey. We are always going to be evolving and learning. And to put a cap or an arrival on your learning. I don't know. So instead of telling yourself that you have to arrive at an opinion or a political party or a stance on something right now just because you're feeling the environmental pressure of our world today, that's not the case. Take a step back, find your own sense of self again, find your own space, even if you kind of put yourself in a bit of a bubble, and just let yourself be in this place of in between. And if you're somebody who has a very strong political stance on things, I would say, and this is a big statement, but I'm going to say it because it's how I feel, you have a responsibility with your confidence and your stance to still hear out and accept people who are different from you. Because when you start dividing yourself from others and separating yourself from others who are different from you, you're missing the whole point. I mentioned this a little bit earlier when I was addressing this question, and it's something that I was touching a little bit on social media, and I wanted to kind of expand a little bit more because I feel like right now, the polarization of these political parties is very interesting to me. I think it comes back to a lot of us needing to belong to a group of people that have the same values in us, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good feeling. But you've got belonging and fitting in mixed up. So there's like number one. Number two, there's something much larger at play here. And this is a more spiritual perspective, but it's been something that I've heard consistently that I totally agree with. If you think this is Democrat versus Republican, you're absolutely wrong. There is something at the root of all of this that is much bigger and much more evil than we can understand. And that energy, if it's a person or a group of people or just simply an energy, thrives off of separation and chaos and drama. And so the more we feed that, the more of the illusion you lean into, the more that you feed into that, the more you contribute to the bigger spiritual picture. And people aren't going to like that I say that. And I'm totally okay with that because that's my perspective. Now, from a psychological perspective, I understand what's going on. There's so much chaos and turmoil that's going on right now and so many big shifts that are happening. Naturally, as human beings, in chaos, we want to find order. You can argue that something like OCD, if you go through childhood trauma or war trauma from the ancestral perspective, is a means for the brain to find order in the chaos. As human beings, we're not meant to witness the things that we've witnessed in the last couple of months, the last few years, and even in other aspects and points of our lives. And so the brain is thriving and living off of this chaos, and it's feeding this bigger issue. But I think what's important to remember about the chaos from the spiritual and the psychological perspective is that chaos always comes before big shifts. Carl Jung has this philosophy that when you use polarization to divide people, eventually after enough time, a third subset of group will form as a result of the two in opposition with each other. It's a natural way for human beings to evolve. And so what's happening right now from the Jungian perspective is that you've got the Democrats and Republicans fighting each other. And eventually there's going to be another group of people that just go, this isn't working for anyone. Something needs to happen that's different. We don't know who those people are yet. We don't know when that's going to happen, but this apex point is happening. So collective systems are being re-examined. And it's unsettling. It's so unsettling for us. But I think for those of us, no matter where you stand on the political spectrum, if you even believe that God is real, or there's an energy out there that is much bigger than us, that is powerful and all loving and all giving, if you believe in any semblance of the sacredness of humanity, if you believe in energy and alchemization and growth and evolution, then I implore you to remember that your neighbor is not your enemy. We are all going through a major transformation. And the alchemy of this time to create order in the chaos is to scale back the hate and move into acceptance, understanding, and compassion, letting everybody be on their journey as they are. And that's why I spend so much time answering this question about educating yourself. Because if you take 8 billion people, You're going to have 8 billion people who are on very different spectrums of their evolutionary journey from the soul perspective, but also from the human one. From those 8 billion people, you can segregate them into different groups of evolution, and you can keep going down and down into communities, into space. I mean, you could do that. You could totally do that. And from that perspective, you would see that everyone gets to be on their own journey. Everybody gets to be on their own journey of their understanding. And the more that we shame people, the less we then give collective permission for people to evolve and transform, because that shame blocks them from feeling empowered to educate themselves, to have dialogue with different people with different perspectives. And the more that we silo each other, the more that we segregate each other, the more we miss the point. Because I truly think that what really is going to heal this at the end of the day is some generation saying, this is what's going on, and this is what's going on, and here's how we're going to figure out a way to work together. But we're not. We're all resorting to violence of the tongue, using tools, things that are accessible in today's world that you can go to Dick's Sporting Good and buy to silence people. It's sick. It's such an illusion. I was having these thoughts to myself the other day driving on the way to Target. I do my best thinking on the way to Target. And I asked Spirit, can you just help me understand, are we doing okay as a society? Are we doing okay? What's going on? The response was very simple. It was an overwhelming, the transformation is occurring, but everybody is being awakened. People are coming online to new aha moments about their own way to navigate what's going on right now. It's like everybody was asleep before, and now this is all waking people up, but it's traumatizing and it's heavy and it's anxiety riddening. And so as people are waking up in this very shocked way, some people are reacting more than they're responding, but eventually everyone is waking up. And I just thought that was a really interesting perspective from Spirit, because it very much feels like that right now. And we saw a little bit of that during the pandemic in 2020. A lot of people started waking up, but I believe that that was just someone lighting a match on the fireworks, like it lit the match, and now like the rope is just burning and burning and burning. And, I hope we never get to the firework exploding, but sure seems like we're on the way. So I felt it was my personal responsibility today to address this question from a place of my own perspective. Wherever you are, violence is not the answer. Educate yourself, let yourself be in a place of in between as you start to figure out how you feel about things and where on the spectrum you may stand. Limit your news consumption. Mix up your sources so you're not stuck in one echo chamber. Pay attention to your body cues. If you feel anxious or heavy after anything, it's a sign to pause. The reality is that we cannot fix the whole world, but we can focus on our own corner of it. So more than anything, all of this, there's a lot of reminders in this, but I think all of this is really just a reminder of what grounds you back in yourself. Because a lot of these things take us outside of ourselves. So what grounds you in yourself? What are your values that guide your choices? And what small actions are in your control? Because even when politics feel divisive, most people ultimately want the same things. We all feel that we're looking for safety, for health, for stability, and for belonging. And remembering that, and looking at the humanity of each person with acceptance of where they are at on their journey rather than where we think they should be, it softens the edges of us versus them, which Spirit has told me many times, the real epidemic of our world today, us versus them. Remember that your neighbor, the person next to you, the person that you may potentially disagree with, they're not your enemy. They're just somebody figuring out their journey. And you don't have to use righteousness in order to justify treating them poorly. So, Anonymous, I'll finish with this. You don't have to make sense of everything happening right now. You can start small. You can educate yourself. You can care for your mental health. You can engage where it feels meaningful. You can return to yourself and even a safe community. And when you do that, you cultivate the energy of the collective field, which is hopefully what we're working towards, a field of calm, compassion, and possibility. Do not forget that the collective is made up of individual people And your individual contribution comes from your connection within yourself. So don't forget to tend to yourself. So that's a really big question, right? It's a really big question to start off the show with, but I felt a personal responsibility to address it. The real thing about that question is that I could keep talking about that for days. Like, the interesting thing about the show is that, like, especially when people just submit a question and I'm not working live, like one-on-one with them, when they can, you have the ability to call in, it kind of limits my capacity for how much like I can go into certain avenues of things. So, take that for what it is. Take it a grain of salt in the perspectives that I have around what's going on right now. And I won't open up about specific political beliefs only because I'm in this place of curiosity still. And I'm really enjoying that right now. I'm really enjoying being in this place of curiosity and educating myself and giving myself time to arrive to a conclusion about something and yet still create a sense of openness because I know that things are ever evolving and changing. So I know there's so much complexity to that question as well, but hopefully it can be well received and hopefully we can do our part. Hey everyone, Kat popping in during the episode today to share that I have something so exciting to announce. I just launched a brand new series of meditations on Insight Timer, the world's #1 meditation app with over 31 million users. I'll be releasing 10 new meditations every month now through August. And the best part? They're totally free, including downloading the app. The guided meditations on Insight Timer aren't just about ancestral healing. They're designed to help you understand how inherited patterns, pain, fears, or choices show up in your everyday life, your relationships, your self-worth, parenting experiences, or even your health. Each one gently helps you untangle those threads so you can move forward feeling more grounded, clear, and connected. Just download the Insight Timer app, search my name, Kat Dow, or click the link in the show notes below. Make sure you're subscribed to my email newsletter to get updates every month on the new meditations coming to your phone soon. All right, let's get back to the episode. All right, let's get into question 2. Kind of hard to follow up that first one. I knew I was starting off big with that one, but I really wanted to get that one out of the way because I knew I had so much to say about it. Let's get into question 2. This one comes from Anonymous, and they say, my question is, should I say goodbye to my goal of learning to drive? See, I am 40 years old. My husband keeps telling me we have handled it all of these years with him driving, me and the kiddos around, but I can't shake it off. I feel like such a bad mother for not knowing how to drive. I am willing to learn. I have just not found someone with the time to teach me, and paying someone is just out of our budget. It feels like I've been such a burden and it's been a nightmare. I feel like a slave waiting around to see who can take me and my kids to the appointments or to do groceries, etc. I don't know what to do. Should I push through and keep on knocking on the door to drive, or should I just listen to my husband, let it go, and just continue on with my life as a forever passenger? I feel defeated. Okay. Thank you so much, Anonymous, for submitting that question. I hear you. And what I hear you saying most is, should I say goodbye to my goal of learning to drive at 40 or push through even though it feels overwhelming? All right. So to me, this question is very layered because what I hear is the exhaustion of feeling dependent on others, and yet how deeply you care for your kids and your role as their mom. Like, let's lean into the yes and of this situation. Yes, you're exhausted, and it's so important to acknowledge that. Your feelings are important. Your experience is your truth. And you also want to be the best mom to your kids. And it sounds like the best wife. You want to be a team player. You want to lead the pack. You want so many different things for your family. And it sounds like you're saying that you're the reason that none of that can happen. And that's simply just not true. I want to normalize and validate something for you. You're not alone, okay? There's a lot of adults who learn to drive later in life. They're just not as maybe common, but there are a lot of people, especially women in different parts of the world, that never learn how to drive. So first, I want to normalize and validate that you are not alone. There are many adults who learn to drive later in life. They may not be as common, to be fair, but it's not too late, okay? There's no expiration on independence. Just because it's not very common doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. What I really want to go into here is I'm feeling and sensing that there's like a couple of things coming up So the first thing that I'm really wanting to like zoom out and show you is that shame and skill are totally separate. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'm hearing a lot of shame in your experience, but here's the great thing about something like driving. It's a skill that you can learn. And so feeling like a bad mother, quote unquote, isn't really about driving to me. I think that's more so the shame talking. It's that inner voice that's telling you that you're inherently bad. Dr. Brene Brown always says that guilt says, I did something wrong, and shame says, I am wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. Actually, I'd really want to know, why didn't you learn how to drive? Was it a cultural thing? My grandmother lived her 80 something years, never learned how to drive because culturally in the Middle East, women didn't really drive. I'm sure she wanted to, but she never did. Is it a fear thing? Were you in a car accident as a child? Like, I would love to work through, where is the root of this decision? Was it just something that genuinely just like never happened and everyone was willing to just drive you around and you kind of were like, okay, well, this is easier. Driving is just a tool. Okay, Anonymous, it really is. It doesn't define your worth as a wife or a woman, as a human, or as a mom. When I'm working with women and we're working on the mother wound, or we're working on them being a mother, if somebody said to me, I don't know how to drive, I would never assume that they're a bad mom, because I wouldn't define your worth as a mother by driving. What I would ask is, what are the amazing things that you do for your children every single day that truly define a mother? Your warmth, your heart, your emotional attunement to them, showing up for them, being emotionally available for them, being a loving, consistent example in their life, teaching them morals and values. Those are the things that make a great mother. Sure, someone in the world could argue that your lack of driving would be an impediment to motherhood, but I don't look at it that way, because it sounds like for the last however many years, you and your husband have been handling it just fine. And your husband saying, we've handled it this way for so long and everything is fine, I'm sure it comes from love. And I'm sure it feels validating to hear that. It's nice, right? Like, oh, I guess I don't really have to drive since, I have got this great husband that helps me figure it out. But I'd be curious if even in that love and support that you have, if everything is still okay. It sounds like it, but I don't want to assume, but I'd be curious if you still have that longing for autonomy, because both can be true. He feels that it's fine, the kids feel that it's fine, and then you might feel like something about that isn't. And I would want to know, is it the shame talking? Or is it an inner desire you truly have that, hey, you know what? I think instead of blaming this on shame, I'm going to get honest with myself and really understand that I actually want to drive. Like, is there a part of you that really wants to drive? Because if so, own it. Driving is one of the greatest tools, man-made tools ever. Having your autonomy, being able to get in the car and go wherever you want, that is a freedom. No wonder at 15 and 16, we're all chomping at the freaking bit to get our driver's license. We want freedom. We want to get out. We want to go where we want to go. And that's also why it's a huge responsibility. So instead of approaching this from being all or nothing, right? Like, you're either never going to drive anymore or you have to drive. Let's just break it up into micro steps. Let's create actionable, attainable goals in baby step form that you can work towards, where it can give you some time to discover if you really want to drive or not. It's entirely possible that you're both nervous and excited, and those two things feel the same. It's entirely possible. Like, I have had so many situations in my life where it's both nervousness, like I'm going to pee my pants, and also I am so excited. I'm like going to crawl out of my skin. I can't wait. Like, I'm like going to burst. You know what I mean? So I think we just have to keep room for that as well. Like, excitement and nerves can feel very similar to each other. But these like micro goals, without having to make like this huge decision overnight, could be find a friend that you love and trust, maybe who has a good sense of humor, somebody you deem potentially a good driver. Maybe it's your husband, somebody who's respectful and patient and kind, who can take you just to like an empty parking lot, and just like drive around. Maybe like 30 minutes a week or an hour a week just to kind of explore like what's out there, like what does it feel like to get behind the wheel? So like I said, like driving is one of those freedoms to give yourself, but also that could be the excitement. But the nervousness could also be that driving is a really big responsibility. It really is. It can be a lot of change. If you start driving and you buy a car or you have access to a car, what does that mean for the way that your role exists in the family? How does it change your relationships? Like it might. Those might be things that are happening underneath the surface of you that are just coming to the surface now. And I love that you asked this question because we can kind of bring those gently up to the surface and look at them together. But like, I would just kind of want to like hold space for that. So do you truly want to? Are you okay with the change that might come with it for better or maybe for challenge? I never say for worse, but some decisions we make and they're great for everybody, but there's still challenge that comes with it. There's still an adjustment period. We still have to be like getting used to how everything changes. Yeah. And I also think, and on the same side of that coin, I think we have to address the question, are you okay with maintaining the decision to not learn how to drive? And to me, it sounds like you're a little scared. And guess what? I want to normalize that. If you weren't a little bit scared, I'd be a little bit worried because in like we said, in some ways you've been living your life the same way for 40 years. Big change can always be scary and your nerves show me your care for the situation, care for yourself, care for your husband, for your children. But also driving is a really big responsibility. So I want you to spend a few minutes every day imagining yourself behind the wheel of your car specifically, the car that you would potentially be driving on a daily basis. I want you could even get in the front seat of the car with the ignition off, everything off, just sit in the garage, cars off, foot on the gas, just kind of like take in the somatic experience and the visual experience and the emotional experience of what it's like to sit in the car. What's in front of you? The steering wheel, you've got the dashboard, the radio, you've got maybe a gear shift, like what's next to you. So put yourself in the shoes of the driver and feel, this is the key, feel yourself driving the car. And maybe you practice that for, a few days. And maybe you call up a trusted friend or your husband and say, can we go to an empty parking lot? I just want to drive around for like 10 minutes, get the hang of things. Also too, like there's so many amazing tools on YouTube. Like YouTube is the greatest educational platform I think that there is, for better or for worse. And I'm going to say for worse there because there's some things on YouTube we know do not belong on there. But you can learn so much on YouTube. You can learn so much. I'm learning how to drive, like even if it's geared towards 16-year-olds, 16-year-olds are still going to have to learn the same things you are and vice versa when you're learning how to drive for the first time. So I just want you to like get in the mindset of like leaning into the feelings to understand, is this actually something you really want to do? Or are you okay taking, pun intended, I guess, a backseat? And so make room for the nervousness, make room for the excitement. You can talk yourself through the emotions. And remember that your brain and your body will trust the experience of driving with time and consistent practice. So you got to put the time in and you got to get consistent practice. And then maybe eventually you give yourself in 6 months or a year the goal of taking your test and getting your driver's license. Maybe you schedule it around your birthday. It's a birthday gift for yourself. Something you would financially save up for. Maybe you do it for the holidays and you gift yourself your driving test. Like you do have to do practice hours, I believe. So maybe there's a resource out there for people who aren't financially always available to pay for putting in the hours behind the wheel. Maybe there's a volunteer service. I don't know. There's so much out there these days. You can really, truly gift yourself some kind of one-on-one time with someone where you can get those hours in and work towards this goal of getting your driver's license, if that's something you truly want. So this isn't really just about driving for me, Anonymous. I think it's mostly about like your sovereignty and in the bigger scope of things, the ability to move freely in your own life. If your soul and your heart and something inside of your body keeps tugging at this, I don't think it's something to silence. And I want to close out with this statement. Whether or not you drive, you are still a worthy, loving mom. But if your heart won't let this go, I think that's your inner wisdom saying that this matters. And I think that's worth honoring. All right. Thanks, Anonymous, for submitting that question. Such a niche question, such a hard follow up after the first one, but a very powerful question. And I just love the little reminders in that. So thanks so much for submitting that. All right, our last and final question for this week's episode comes from Lauren in Los Angeles, California. She asks, I'm in my 30s and I feel like making friends as an adult is so hard. My old friends are busy with kids, careers, or live far away. I want deeper, meaningful friendships, not just surface level connections, but I don't know how to find them without feeling awkward or desperate. How do adults build real friendships again? Ugh, Lauren, this is so relatable. I literally feel this on so many levels. When I moved from California to Colorado, I literally was like, oh my God, I forgot that it's so hard to meet people as an adult. It's hard. So here's what I hear you asking. How do I cultivate deep, authentic friendships as an adult when life feels so busy and isolating? And I think it's the reason I laugh and I find a little bit of humor in this is just because it's a tender and relatable question. I think so many people in their 30s and their 40s and beyond feel this way. I think making adults as friends, I think making friends as adults is way harder than it is when we were kids because you've got schedules, responsibilities, and even distance. Like the 2 years that I've lived here in Colorado, my closest friends lived far away, and that was really hard for me when I just wanted to get out and go have fun and go do something. And it's like, don't really know anyone who would do those things with me here. So I just want to normalize the longing, that wanting depth and authenticity, and also being human and having responsibilities. You wanting that deep kind of authenticity and connection, it absolutely does not make you needy. So I just want to not that I really heard that, but maybe I'm just projecting my own sense a little bit. But anyone that's looking for deep authenticity and connection is not needy. It's literally them trying to meet their biological and emotional, psychological human needs. Belonging and connection are core needs. I will say it forever. If you don't believe me, go watch literally anything about Dr. Gabor Mate, who has so much science-backed data behind this. This is as children, we have basic needs: belonging, connection, authenticity, and love. These are all things that we need. And then when we get older, all of a sudden we're like, maybe I don't need those things anymore because I can get this from here and this from here. And it's like, are we filling voids or are we getting real connection? So I want to speak to the vulnerability in that because, again, this is very relatable. It takes courage to admit loneliness, but I think what takes even more courage is to reach out and look for new connections. And I'll share a little bit of my personal experience with this. I was very grateful that when I first moved to Colorado, I met my wonderful neighbor, and we had this great connection right off the bat. And it was really wonderful for me to feel like I had people to connect with. She introduced me to her friends. I joined book club. It was great. I was like, oh my gosh, yay, friends, And then all of a sudden my life took this crazy turn. My brother-in-law passed away tragically in an accident. I got very, very sick for the last 2 years. I went through some emotional ups and downs and was battling some feelings of depression again. I was just not in the mood to socially connect with people. I was way more focused on my relationship and my health and my inner well-being. And it's as soon as I found a little bit of that connection, it was like the rug was pulled from underneath me. And I was like, wow, okay, apparently this chapter of my life is not about friendship. And that was really hard for me. And when I received your question, what I started thinking about is this really interesting way that I think life works. Because in childhood, I think childhood friendships, when they're formed, they're formed through things like school. You sit next to someone at school, or sports teams, or, your parents are friends. A lot of childhood friendships, I think up until high school, are really formed around some really specific scenarios that children are kind of not forced into, but they're just naturally in all of the time. So making friends is a huge part of that time of our lives. And then we get older, and adult friendships, we start to realize, require so much more intentionality. You have to be focused on having friendships when you're an adult, because you may be siloed in an office or working from home or in a relationship where your energy is going to one person instead of maybe 5 people. But there are chapters of our lives where friendships are at the pinnacle, the apex. They're so important to us. And I remember that there were chapters of my life where I had 15 friends. I had so many friends. I was I was wealthy with friends. I was so blessed and grateful that I could call any one of these people at any time, and we could go out and have fun, and we could do so many different things. That there was so much. There were so many dynamics in terms of that friend group, and I still love them, but I'm not as close with them today as I was when I was in my early to mid 20s, because my life is just different now. Arguably, all of our lives are different now. So you might be somebody that loves throwing clay or pottery. So you might want to join once a week or once every couple of weeks a pottery class. Or maybe you're somebody who's deep on the healing journey and you want to join a CODA group or something where it's a group of people, and this could be even a woman's circle, but just like a free resource or like low cost resource where you can join a group of people who are like-minded on the things that you're moving through in those areas of your life. I think it's completely normal that everyone feels a little bit awkward at first, that you're just meeting these people for the first time. Sometimes you're figuring out where and how you fit in with people. It doesn't mean that you're failing. It doesn't mean that you're a bad friend. It just means that you're navigating a sometimes intimidating situation. And it's nice to have people who are warm and loving and inclusive, who can bring you into the fold of a new environment. So with new friendships, we're getting to know a whole new human that we don't even really understand yet. No, we all come from different backgrounds. We all are fueled by different things. We're all shaped by different things. Maybe you have overlapping interests with people, but you might not be sure what else to lean on the conversation. I remember, there's just joining a book club was great because it was interesting. Like, I wasn't really a big fiction reader, but when I joined the book club, I really wanted to make friends, and we had to read a book, to be a part of this book club. And I'm naturally very introverted, so this is a very extroverted group. What we did all have in common is that there was a willingness to work towards a goal together, which is reading the book and discussing it. And so the overlapping interests that we all had was maybe not me, reading the fiction book, which I eventually learned to love because now I read all the time. But it was the overlapping interest of we're all coming together to talk about something and have a meeting of the minds about something. And I love that shit. Even if they didn't believe it to be that, I loved that. So that was my overlapping interest. And I loved being able to sit around food and chat and talk. And, I was shy and introverted, but, and intimidated. I was very intimidated. I was just like, oh my God, I don't, these people have known each other for so long. I'm new here. Are they going to like me? Are they not going to like me? And then you share what you do for work and you're like, I don't know if people are going to like me. And so, but you just lean in, you try to find overlapping interests, and, eventually maybe you find really deep connection with one person or two people. You don't have to be friends with everybody, but, you find the people that you can find that depth with. But first, it means putting yourself in situations that you have to lean in, have some courage, and you might feel a little uncomfortable. I think one of the most valuable tools that you can have when navigating a first friend date or just getting to know someone is to be a really good question asker. I'm making up that word, but I think it's relevant. When I met Tyler, my fiance, by the time this comes out, he'll almost be my husband, which is kind of crazy to think about. But what I loved the most about him was his natural curiosity about people. And what really made me feel so seen and heard by him was his ability to ask me questions, some meaningful, some surface level, but just being curious about me. And as somebody who tends to be a little bit more guarded and introverted at times with people that I'm first getting to know, I had to challenge myself to open up. And there was this interesting point in when we were dating. Right before we started dating, we were sitting at the fireplace in our apartment complex where we met. And I could feel that he wanted to go deeper emotionally with me. And I wasn't sure. I was nervous. I wanted that depth, but I wasn't really sure if I should show myself, my parts. And he said, you think that you're being vulnerable with me, but you're actually not. And I can feel that you're guarded. And I'll never forget, he called me the fuck out. And I was like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing because I really like this guy and I want to meet him in this way. And so you might have to be the person who's curious and willing to ask questions and receive parts of people, even if you may not always agree. And I think that it's wonderful, wonderful to have friends who we don't always agree with and agree with everything that you say. I think it gives depth. I think it gives character. As long as friendships can remain civil and kind and respectful and loving, I think it's important to have friends of all different viewpoints. But you want to make sure that you can connect with them on those things, especially if they're things that are deep and you want that deep connection. So you can join groups and join classes and you can volunteer and you can lean into that stuff. Be a good question asker, share parts of yourself, share the values, especially if you're looking for something deep. Sharing your values with someone creates natural bonding, I think. I also think you could find depth in places like yoga studios, but then there's also places where you could just meet people and become friends with them in a very surface level way. Like when I moved to Denver, I had my neighbor and she was kind enough to share her friends with me, but I became friends with the women who did my facials and my hair and my brows and my spray tans. And because I would see them so regularly, I probably saw them more regularly than anyone else, because they're just like maintenance things. And eventually we developed friendships and we'd go on walks outside of the services together and we'd, text and chat and share things with each other. And I'd get a lot of one-on-one time with them. So I feel like you end up sharing a lot of things with them too that can get kind of deep. So it's nice to get a social fix from that too. But yeah. And I think too, besides the question asking thing, like I think most relationships of all kind are built in micro moments. So like text check-ins or, do you want to go walk together? Do you want to go to this yoga class together? Small rituals, once the first Monday of every month, you guys meet for coffee and you guys commit to it. And little things I call I thought of yous, which I think is really cute in a friendship of just like, oh, I heard this podcast and I thought of you, or I read this article and I thought of you, or, the pinnacle of like sharing memes on Instagram and social media like that. I think that's what makes social media so fun. Like I said, I left two of my really good friends in San Diego, and half of our friendship maintenance over the last 2 years has been hilarious and like meaningful things on Instagram and social media, which has been nice. So I think it's okay to be like, especially if you're looking for depth, I think it's okay to be the first one that reaches out. I don't think it makes you desperate. I think it makes you intentional. But, if you notice you're the only one who's reaching out all the time and there's not a lot of reciprocity, I wouldn't assume the worst of people. Remember that people may be going through things that they haven't shared, or maybe they don't feel comfortable sharing, or they're embarrassed, or who knows what people are going through. It could be so simple and truly have nothing to do with you. And I would say most of the time it doesn't. So yeah, but you could always take space if you find yourself to be the only person reaching out. Just could be that it's chapters are changing. And I think that's important to remember is some chapters of our lives, we're going to have so much room and time and capacity and energy for friendships, and we can lean in and we can do all the fun things and we can keep up with the demands of a friendship because, all relationships, they have expectations or demands, there's a give and take and we share, we talk, or we catch up or whatever. When those things start dwindling away, that we feel like, where is the friendship? Where is the connection? But yeah, you're not desperate if you keep reaching out. Just notice the reciprocity of it. On a soul level, I kind of want to just like touch on this too. If you're feeling like the friendships in your lives on a soul level are not nourishing for you, you could try something out there and different. And this is probably out there and different for a lot of people. But for me, it's something that is really resonant for my own spiritual practice. You could write a letter to spirit. You could meditate on this. You could just set the intention in your heart that you want to be in connection and you want to meet and be surrounded by soul family, soul friends, people who nourish your soul. You may not see them every single day. You may only see them once a month, but when you see them, it nourishes that part of your spirit that's looking for friendship and connection. So I think there's that practice as well that you could do. I think too, when we get into like our 30s, we start redefining what friendships feel like and look like. And so yeah, adult friendships, they may not look like sleepovers or daily hangouts or going to the club or, having a really consistent routine of seeing each other. But I still think it can be deeply nourishing and steady and real. And I say this about family systems a lot, and I'll say it for friendships too, but like sometimes when we are changing as humans, this feels a little intuitive too, so take it for how it lands for you, Lauren, but when we're changing and evolving and growing as humans, the way that we relate to other people could also drastically change. And so, including our families. So, I always tell people, like, if you don't want to connect with your family on politics, then do not engage in the conversations of politics. Don't engage and find something else, cooking, nostalgia, music, anything else other than, but there's so many things you could get into besides politics. So like you're always in charge of the way that you respond. And so if you're seeing yourself in friendships where you are frustrated or challenged by the way that you're connecting, see if you can find another way. And people's reciprocity to your questions and your interests will show you the depth at which they're willing to go or not. And if they're not willing to go into that depth, it has nothing to do with you, probably has more to do with their inability or their fear or their lack of being able to go within themselves. And that can say a lot about how we move forward with them. Okay, so 3 wildly different questions this week. Wildly different questions. But that's it for today's conversation with the Heal with Kat show. I want to thank you guys for being here. If this episode resonated with you, if one of the questions really stood out to you, I would love to hear from you. You can drop a comment or a review and let me know your biggest takeaway. Your reviews and your ratings, guys, even your subscriptions, they mean the world to me, and I'm so grateful for them, but they really do help more people find this show. I've mentioned this before, but we're going to transition fully into the show by December. So we're no longer going to be doing interviews. It's no longer technically a podcast. By December 1st, we will be a full-on Q&A type show. I want to mention this too, because I didn't mention it in the intro. You can always go to katdow.com/ask. We're going to link it in the show notes below, and you can submit your question. And when you submit, you can either submit it with no live in call, so we don't have to work one-on-one, simply the way that I've been doing it the last 2 shows, or you can choose the live call-in. You'll submit your question, choose a live call-in, and then I'll select your question, and you and I will have 15 to 20 minutes one-on-one to address your question live, quote unquote live on the show. It comes out at a later date. We go back and edit it, but it is live with me so we can chat through. You can always stay anonymous, including your location, but those are really juicy moments to be able to work through something together. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss future episodes, and follow the show wherever you love listening. And if you know someone who could use a little healing or clarity right now, please share this episode with them, because it might be exactly what they need to hear today. Thank you so much for being here with me. And until next time, keep honoring your journey, keep showing up for yourself, and don't forget, I'm always here if you need any support. Thanks, guys.